Listen to part of a lecture in a physics class.
The thing I want to focus on today is the three components of color. Every color can be described in terms of having three main elements on the visible spectrum of electromagnetic radiation. These are hue, saturation, and brightness. Let me first talk about hue. Hue is determined by the wavelength of the visible spectrum. It denotes the qualities that can be differentiated by the color words, or color name, such as red, yellow, green, and purple. Hue is what we most often think of as color, but it differs slightly from color, because color can have all of the three attributes, that is, saturation, or brightness, as well as hue. Hue is calculated in degrees of the color wheel, which goes from red, to yellow, to lime, to blue, to magenta, and finally back to red. That's why 0 degrees on the hue color wheel is red, and 360 degrees is red again. Moving on to the second factor, there is saturation. Saturation is the intensity of a hue, which basically refers to the amount of white light mixed with a hue. When a hue is highly saturated, it will appear in vivid color. At the other extreme end, a hue will have a gray tone when there is no saturation. Thus, desaturated colors appear duller. How saturated a hue appears depends relatively on what color it is placed next to. For example, when a 50% saturated red is placed next to a 30% saturated red, it will appear more vivid and bright than the same red placed next to a 70% saturated red. Lastly, the third component is brightness, which is also called lightness in some contexts. Brightness measures the relative lightness, or darkness of a given color. Adding white makes the color lighter, while adding black makes it darker, creating shades. Brightness refers to the intensity of the hue, and the effect of brightness is relative to other values in the composition. Some shades of blue appear brighter than others, due to greater or lesser degrees of light we have. If the light is weak, the color will appear less bright, whereas, if the light is intense, the color will be much brighter to the eye. Thus, the perception of brightness depends on spatial context, since the same color can appear light or dark, depending on what surrounds it.
Question 2. Why does the professor mention the hue color wheel? Question 3. In what order is the lecture organized?